How's it going, everyone? Welcome to Shifting Lanes. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Hanson and I'm here in Woodstock, Virginia for the first ever trail trek tour. This is where 7 cars from different manufacturers come together and test out their off-road chops. So for today, there's a bunch of different cars. We've got the Mazda CX-5, the Hyundai Kona, the RAV4 Adventure, the Kia Sportage, the Jeep Cherokee Trailhawk, the VW Tiguan, and finally the Honda CR-V. So we're going to go through a bunch of different trails and see what it's like to drive these cars off-road. Alright, starting out in the Kia Sportage. This car as equipped is $36,420. This thing is equipped with a 2-liter turbo. This is the second most powerful car that's being compared today out of the 7, and it has a 237 horsepower engine with 260 pound-feet of torque. This car weighs in just a hair under 4,000 pounds at 3,997. In terms of off-road capability and general capability, this thing has a 28-degree approach angle and a 24.6 departure angle. For ground clearance, this thing has 6.8 inches and a wheelbase of 105.1 inches. So let's talk about the styling of this car. This is a love it or hate it situation. I personally like the look of this car. It goes against the design grain of all the different type of crossovers. Most crossovers are going for the more rugged look. This one is kind of like this Mazda CX-5 where it looks more sculpted. And from the back, I think it looks a little bit like a Porsche Cayenne. So in the styling department, I'd have to give this kind of a relatively high rating, but that's really personal preference. Let's talk about utility. There's plenty of utility in this Sportage. I have to give it to Kia and car companies and the Korean car companies like Hyundai for packing in so much feature per your dollar. You do get a lot of stuff in here. I'm going off-roading, and I could also turn on the ventilated seats, heated steering wheel. You get a very roomy second row and a very usable hatch. In terms of capability, going through these trails is very capable, but this doesn't have the highest towing capacity. This is at 2,000 pounds, which is strange given the amount of power that it has. If towing capacity is one of the more important parameters in your decision making when choosing these crossovers, then just be aware that this is more limited compared to these other offerings. Okay, so now you find me in the back of the pack with the 2018 Honda CR-V. More specifically, the Honda CR-V Touring all-wheel drive. This car as is priced at $35,025. This has a 1.5-liter turbo engine producing 190 horsepower and 179 pound-feet of torque. This thing has a towing capacity of 1,500 pounds. And in terms of mileage, this has 27 city, 33 highway, and 29 combined. This makes it the most fuel-efficient crossover in this comparison today. In terms of off-road capability, the approach angle is 20.8 degrees and the departure angle is 24.8 degrees. Ground clearance, 8.2 inches. So let's first start talking about the styling of the Honda CR-V. This is a very modern looking car. You know, it looks very up to date. This has been recently refreshed. The interior looks magnificent. I love the faux wood on here and this giant screen in the middle, albeit it's a relatively small screen, but the bezel is fairly large. So it gives off that illusion that it's a much larger screen. The speedometer, I'm in love with the look of the speedometer. It's non-traditional. It's like almost like a throwback to the S2000 with the huge wide-swept tachometer. From the outside, the styling, it's got a rugged look that's kind of found in all crossovers of this size. You've got wide, big wheel arches, a tall belt line. If you compare this to the CR-Vs of old, this is probably the most aggressive looking one. In terms of utility, there's plenty of utility to be had. There's a spacious second row. In terms of the second row, the doors open up almost all the way to 90 degrees. So for those people with kids, that means that putting your car seat is going to be a lot easier and a lot less of a battle. That also means that if you're parked next to one of these CR-Vs in the mall, so just watch out because you might get some door dings. In terms of capability, this car has shown that it's able to make mincemeat out of this trail. Obviously, you're not going to go rock crawling or anything. This does have an 8.2-inch ground clearance, which is pretty decent compared to the other 6 cars in this grouping. Overall, you can't go wrong with the CR-V. This is like the best value, even though it's not the most powerful. It doesn't have the best off-road capability compared to the rest of the field here. This does have the most fuel-efficient engine, and Honda's known for their bulletproof reliability. This is a car that you're going to own for at least the next dozen years. So now I've moved on to the 2018 Mazda CX-5 Grand Touring all-wheel drive. This one, as spec'd out, is $34,685. This has a 2.5-liter 4-cylinder engine producing 187 horsepower and 186 pound-feet of torque. This has the Skyactiv G engine, which has a 2-cylinder deactivation mode. This car weighs in at 3,700 pounds, and it's capable of towing up to 2,000 pounds. In terms of mileage, we have 24 city and 30 highway. And within the bunch, this has the worst approach and departure angle, so I have to really be careful where I'm placing this car. This has a 17-degree approach angle and a 20-degree departure angle with a ground clearance of 7.6 inches. Let's first start off with the styling of the Mazda CX-5. I like the look of this car. All crossovers are trending towards the ruggedized look, the bulky fenders, huge wheel arches, very capable looking design. Mazda kind of decided to go the other way around, probably because it fits more with their Jinba Itai horse and rider ideology. This CX-5 looks more sculpted. I wouldn't go as far as saying this would be found in an art museum, but relatively speaking, this is a more beautiful crossover compared to some of the other cars that you see in this competition today. Inside, I've got white leather seats. I don't know if that's the right choice for off-roading in such a muddy day as today. So, off-road performance. Going through this trail, I have it in manual mode. I have it in second gear, just so that it doesn't try to upshift on me. And I have the traction control off, and also the lane departure warning turned off, because there's really only one lane here and you don't want to deviate from that very much. But let's talk about off-road capability. At first I mentioned that this has the worst approach and departure angle, but it certainly does not have the worst off-road performance. This can handle it pretty well. I love the suspension tuning on this thing, because even though I'm going through a ton of rocks, it still feels really comfortable. It's not a jarring ride, and going off-roading and like going over all of these rocks is a true test of just how jarring a car can be. And so far it's been pretty decent. I'm enjoying driving through this a lot. It feels comfortable, and of course I can't really say anything about highway performance about this car, but Mazda is known to have great handling, and I'll just leave it at that. Now I'm sitting in a 2018 Volkswagen Tiguan SEL Premium 4Motion. This one has a 2-liter 4-cylinder turbo engine. It's rated at 184 horsepower and 221 pound-feet of torque. It has a 26-degree approach angle and a 23-degree departure angle with a 7.9-inch ground clearance. This one, as is priced at $41,245. This is the largest vehicle of the bunch. This could potentially qualify for a mid-size SUV, but this is actually a 3-row compact SUV. This car has a really cool looking fully digital instrument display and an 8-inch touchscreen. Utility wise, this is the most utilitarian, I would say, just because of the amount of space available in this car. There's 3 rows available, albeit you probably don't want to fit adults back in the 3rd row. So far I feel like this is the most comfortable SUV out of the entire selection. Maybe it has something to do with the longer wheelbase. The longer wheelbase would also mean that the brake over angle is going to be less. That's why a 2-door Jeep Wrangler would have immense brake over angle capability. But I feel like in here it creates a more comfortable off-roading experience. The forces of going over these bumps are spread apart over a wider span. What a capable little car. Little car. This is a fairly large compact, but man, it's pretty stunning what this thing is able to do. And it could fit a ton of people. Now you find me sitting in the 2019 Jeep Cherokee Trailhawk. If you look at the numbers, this is the best car for this competition. This has more serious off-road hardware. This has the Active Drive 2s, so that's the 2-speed transfer case. It has locking rear differential. It's a Jeep, so it's made to go off-road. So this is the type of car that you'd find on these off-road trails. And with the 2019, if you haven't seen our review just yet, I'll link it up here. But this is the Trailhawk version. I drove the Overland edition. This has select terrain, so that means it's an all-time all-wheel drive that it could send different amounts of torque to the rear wheels. So there's a couple of more buttons here. You have the hill descent control, you have the locking rear differential, and you have four-wheel drive low. Of course, you could only get to four-wheel drive low when you shift it into neutral. And all of that mechanical goodness is attached to the 2-liter turbocharged engine that produces 270 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque. That's attached to the 9-speed transmission, and this also has the highest towing capability of 4,000 pounds. Visually speaking, you could tell this is the Trailhawk because of the red tow hooks. The front fascia is also different, so you could have a more extreme 29.9 approach angle and a 32.2 departure angle with a ground clearance of 8.7 inches. This ticks all of the off-road marks. The downside is this is the most expensive vehicle, actually tied with the Volkswagen Tiguan. All of this comes in at $41,245. With that said, let's get going with the Jeep Grand Cherokee Trailhawk, utilizing that 4-low, so you're getting a lot more mechanical advantage. This has an 8.7-inch ground clearance, and you can kind of feel it just going over these rocks. It feels like they're just not there at all, even though I'm moving around a lot. In the other vehicles, you really have to worry about
so we just lost the tire on the RAV4.
Ooh, someone just popped the tire on the RAV4.
Okay.
Let's get back to our regularly scheduled off-road session. So the RAV4 sliced the tire, sliced it on a piece of rock that was sticking out, and to be honest with you, all of these rocks that are sticking out are currently trying to slice my tires too. Now I've got hill descent control activated, and it's going down by 0.6 miles per hour, and this is cool. I don't even have to touch the brakes. It's just going down at a slow, controlled rate. That's pretty cool. It is also very slow. So I'm going to take that off and just go down easily. Again, no slicing of the tires. Out of all the different cars in this competition today, this is the most capable, and you feel it. Not just looking at and understanding the specs, but actually being behind the wheel of this thing. It just feels like this trail poses absolutely no difficulty for this car. Pretty impressive to think, given that this is a jack of all trades type of car. Great for taking kids to school, doing some shopping. On the weekends you feel like going mudding, going to the off-road trails. You can in this car. Alright, so now that I'm sitting in the Hyundai Kona, this is technically the least capable when compared to these other cars, and I just jumped out of the Jeep Cherokee Trailhawk, which is technically the most capable in this competition. So this has less power, this has a lot less ground clearance, this has less approach angle and departure angle. The deck is stacked against this little subcompact. Again, this should really be compared to like the Mazda CX-5, the Toyota CHR, all those other little subcompacts, but this is the this is like the Rudy of the competition. This guy has a pretty big heart, and it thinks it can hang with the big boys. So let's see if it can actually handle it. I do have to be very careful where I place this car, because again, it has a smaller approach angle and smaller departure angle than compared to these other cars, and I just have to make sure that I place the car properly and I avoid big obstacles. This does have a shorter wheelbase, the shortest wheelbase out of all of these other cars, and that makes sense because this is a subcompact car. So the short wheelbase should mean that I have a larger breakover angle. I've driven behind this car and I've seen this thing do some freewheeling. I'd have to say this is probably the least comfortable car out of the bunch. The suspension feels like it's really designed more for the road and not for off-roading. I think it also has a lot to do with the fact that this is a relatively light car and it's getting tossed around these trails pretty good. What a surprise this little car really is. It's really inappropriate to have this being compared to the other cars, but what this car really shows you is that even though this is a subcompact, it could still tackle some of these trails. Okay, so now I'm finally sitting in the 2018 Toyota RAV4 Adventure. I have Corey Profit here, the PR guy for Toyota, right?
That's me.
So what can you tell me about this car?
Definitely. So this is the 18 RAV4 Adventure Grade. This is a special model we introduced for the 18 model year. We've got about a ½ inch of additional ground clearance, and it's really intended to let you guys get off road a little bit more than you would ordinarily. It's a little bit more capable. We've got a nice towing package included on this, so an upgraded radiator and oil cooler. So just hit the trails for the weekend, go out camping, do whatever you want to do out and about.
It's good that you mentioned the 3,500 towing capacity, because I believe the other RAV4s, they have a 2,000 pound towing capacity. Right?
Correct.
Okay.
So we've got the tow prep package on this. We've got a lot of customers who want the additional capacity just to tow a small trailer if they want to do some weekend camping.
So with the adventure package, I noticed that there's a lot more like black things in here. There's like a black stripe, there's like black bezels, there's black wheels. Is that something that's unique to the Adventure?
It is. So we've got a little additional body cladding. You've got the front lower spoiler cladding, additional black cladding, unique wheels, entire combination, and then some additional carbon fiber like trim on the interior. This also has the additional winter package, so it's got heated cloth seats, heated steering wheel, for those of you in the northern climate.
Right. Now, this in terms of infotainment, this has the Entune, but it doesn't have the Entune 3.0. Is that correct?
Correct.
So, so does this have CarPlay and Android Auto?
We don't have CarPlay on this model, but it does have Series I free, so you can pretty much do what you would without the actual interface of CarPlay on the screen.
So it comes with stuff like Pandora and like iHeartRadio.
Correct.
Those different apps.
Yep.
Now that the Trail Trek Tour is over, the scores have been tallied, we finally have a winner. Now, how does the scoring work? Well, there are 7 cars and there are 7 judges, and we have been asked to rank the cars from 1 to 7 in the 3 categories, and everything would be tallied up, and the cars with the lowest score, just like golf scores, would rank better. So let's first start off with the style category. With the exception of one, every judge picked the Mazda CX-5 as the best styled crossover in the competition. And I completely agree here, because the CX-5 is a beautifully styled crossover. It certainly looks like a work of art rolling down the highway. In the utility department, the Volkswagen Tiguan was a big favorite amongst all the judges, and it's fairly clear to see because it was the only compact crossover in the competition with its own 3rd row. There's a lot of space and you could just do a lot with that vehicle. In the capability category, everyone picked the Jeep Cherokee Trailhawk. This was a unanimous decision. This was a clear winner. It had a lot more off-road hardware. It had a lot more capability compared to the rest of the lineup in this competition. So that's the winners in each of the categories. Now, with everything tallied up, every single point having equal weight, with a tiebreaker going to the capability category, who do we have as the top 3 winners? Well, the top 3 winners sound like the winners in each of the categories, with the 3rd place winner going to the Mazda CX-5, the runner-up going to the Volkswagen Tiguan, and you guessed it, the overall winner for the very first Trail Trek Tour is the 2019 Jeep Cherokee Trailhawk. I'll put up the score sheet for the entire competition up right now, and you can see how each vehicle fared in the different categories and how they rank overall. Now, how did I judge compared to the rest of the judges? I ranked the Volkswagen Tiguan as number 1, and number 2 was the Jeep Cherokee, followed by the Kia Sportage, and maybe I was a little bit biased because I drove this on the way down, but apparently I guessed completely wrong there, because the Kia Sportage was ranked dead last in the Trail Trek Tour competition. Now, just because it was ranked last doesn't mean that this was a terrible car. In reality, all of these cars performed spectacularly. We had no incidents except for the sliced tire in the RAV4, and that was just an accident. Thankfully, there was a full-size spare. Given that we rode in the off-road trails for a good 6 hours for each of these cars, showed just how reliable, how usable, how capable all of these compact crossovers really are. So what did you think about how these crossovers were ranked? Which one was your personal favorite? Please let us know in the comments below. With that said, I want to wrap this up. I want to say thank you very much to Trail Trek Tour for inviting me down to be one of the judges for the very first ever Trail Trek Tour competition. And I also want to thank all the manufacturers that provided us with all of these fantastic compact crossovers and subcompact crossover. So if you liked the video, please consider giving it a thumbs up, and also subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and also hit that notification bell so you can get notified anytime we make a new video on events like this, anytime we review cars, or anytime we make an update to our project cars, to Project BRZ, Project Volvo V70R, and also Project IS300. And of course, who can't forget the Project V8 Vantage. We have plenty more updates on those project cars. So I want to thank you so much for watching till the very end, and I'll catch you next time.